The reasons for the Ukrainian conflict are well known to anyone who has gone far enough to look at the back history of its current most critical stage. And I will not repeat myself. I'm sure that everyone here is well aware and understands my position on the issue. I have voiced it many, many times. But we also know something else. Those who encouraged, goaded, and armed Ukraine, stirring it up against Russia, for decades fostered rampant nationalism and neo-Nazism, simply couldn't care less not only for Russian interests, but for Ukrainian interests either, for true interests of the people of that country. They have no remorse for that people. It's nothing but expendable material for globalist expansionists on the West, as well as their serfs in Kiev. The results of reckless filibusterism speak for themselves. Let's ask ourselves another question. Could it be different? And allow me to go back to what President Trump said. He said that had he been in power, that could have been avoided. And I agree with that statement. It's true, it could have been avoided had the work been built differently with the U.S. administration back in the day. If Ukraine hadn't been turned into a destructive weapon in someone else's arms, had they not used the Northern Atlantic bloc approaching our borders, had Ukraine preserved its independence, its true sovereignty. And another question, how should we have resolved bilateral Russian-Ukrainian issues that were obviously consequence of disintegration of a massive country and complex geopolitical transformations? I believe that even the disintegration of the USSR had to do with the position of the Russian leadership back in the day to get rid of any ideological confrontation, hoping that now that we've dealt with communism, now we will build a true flourishing world. No, but it seems that there are other factors at play, geopolitical and factors of different kind, and ideological clashes had nothing to do with it. How should they be resolved in a polycentric world? And how would the situation in Ukraine be resolved? Its different poles would test out the situation of the Ukrainian conflict for themselves. These potential pressure points, rifts that exist in their own regions, and then the collective response would be much more responsible and reasonable. At the basis of resolving would be the understanding that all the participants of this complex situation have their own interests. They're grounded in objective and subjective circumstances. They must not be overlooked. Efforts of all countries in their quest for security and development are legitimate. Of course, this applies for Ukraine, for Russia, and for all our neighbors. It's the states of the region who should have the final say in creating the regional system. It's these countries who have the best chance at agreeing on a universally acceptable model of cooperation because it affects them directly. It is of their vital interests. For other countries, this situation in Ukraine is a bargaining chip in a different, much larger game, their own game. And generally, that game has nothing to do with specific issues of countries, or in this case, for that country or those countries involved in the conflict. It's just a pretext to solve their own goals as well as to profit from war. That's why they showed up on our doorstep with NATO infrastructure. For years they sat idly by, gazing at the Donbass tragedy, the genocide, at the extermination of Russian people at our ancestral historical lands that started in 2014 after the bloody coup d'etat.